Tracy makes the case, if you want to call it that news organizations and the government may have worked together to dupe you, the public, in order to gain support for gun control laws.
Proves this device called a bump stock. If you take a look at it, I mean, any look at it, it takes a semi-automatic firearm and it makes it perform like a fully automatic firearm. It makes it function like one. And what the NRA has said is we ought to take a look at that, see if it's in compliance with federal law, and it's worthy of additional regulation.
The president also wants to ban bump stocks and other devices that can enable rapid-fire shooting. Margaret Brennan is at the White House, where the president will sit down with students, parents, and teachers today to talk about keeping schools safe. Margaret, good.
To abolish the Second Amendment. So we're not going to let that happen. I can tell you that right now. We're going to preserve it. We're going to cherish it. We're going to take care of it. Okay?
My buddy that was standing right next to me said, "I'm hit." And then we knew it was real. And it was chaos. We got him down and people screaming, and
he got hit right in the chest?
Just pretty horrific. My buddy got shot 3 times in the chest.
Now let me clarify before I get mislabeled diving into this next point. A false flag doesn't always mean that somebody believes that an event is 100% false or 100% a hoax. It's just that some elements may be false, may be a hoax, and things like this may be added in just to make the story a little bit juicier for the American public. This photo here shows the distance between the shooting position of Stephen Paddock, who allegedly acted alone, and the epicenter of his target, the Route 91 Country Music Festival. 1,100 feet, that's nearly 1,200 feet, so that's just under 400 yards away from the shooting position. Now I'm going to show you how a bump fire stock works, but for this man's buddy to be shot 3 times center mass at that range with a bump fire stock is absolutely ridiculous. So you can see that each shot out of this magazine, which would be the situation in which this buddy was shot 3 times in the chest. These shots are fractions of an inch, if not a little over an inch away from each other with each shot. Depending on how far each shot was from the last, that could be a matter of feet or tens of feet at 400 yards. So the premise on which this bump fire stock works is your buffer tube is riding freely within a hollowed out portion that accommodates your buffer tube, and your whole rifle, except for the stock, is moving, and with that forward pressure of your hand, you are essentially just riding the rifle forward into your trigger finger, and essentially makes you pull the trigger and fire off another round. So the whole rifle, except for the stock, is moving, which at a distance like that would be pretty damn inaccurate.
I don't know if you can count how fast I was able to unload 30 rounds, but they call this spray and pray. I would say the target's neutralized, but you know, some flyers. I've actually seen people with...
Now that was just a 20-yard target. Yeah, he was standing, and the Vegas shooter was propped up using bipods, and he also had scopes which allowed him to fire more accurately from a windowsill. But that's a smooth surface, just like the masonite on the top of this shooting bench. That kind of accuracy is highly unlikely at 400 yards. Watch this bipod dance all over the top of the masonite. Now, in all these close quarters school shootings, a bump fire stock wasn't used. And even given the amount of ammunition carried by these shooters, the amount of casualties was, for lack of a better word, pathetic. Now, could you imagine the accuracy of the shooter with a bump fire stock in those close quarters situations? Makes absolutely no sense to ban them.
Hi, I'm Paul Nealon. I'm going to simulate automatic fire with this semi-automatic rifle using only my finger. What's Congress going to do? Outlaw fingers?
I've heard of using just your fingers, the aid of your belt loop on your jeans, or a rubber band to perform this same exact technique. Well then, who cares if the bump stocks get banned? They're impractical, they spray bullets all over the place, you're wasting ammunition, you're less accurate, they're just totally impractical. And if they ban the stock, and you can perform the same rate of fire using another item or another technique, then who really cares? But it's not about that. It's about their government sticking their fingers in where they don't belong. Still think bump fire stocks are deadly? If it were me on the other end of the gun, I'd rather the shooter had a bump fire stock than a weapon with which he would actually have to make his shots count. As I said in the video about the true gun control agenda, the purported and self-anointed valiant defenders of the Second Amendment, now including the President, are backing down on these common sense issues at the behest of the shrieking crybaby American public that would sacrifice others' freedom for a false sense of security for themselves. Starting with one little speech or rally, these events snowball into a much larger movement as a result of the media coverage afforded them. It's an issue that the media starts by covering the event to begin with, and feed by continuously covering these stories that raise the hopes of some and boil the blood of others. Either way, the ratings are good and the network's ad time is selling. The go-to argument in favor of a ban on anything always starts with the same basic premise of security over freedom. This cannot happen again. What can we concede to these children crying out for their own safety? I believe in the Second Amendment, but it's an argument from a position of emotion and opinion, a tactic that twists an already loaded statement into common sense. After all, everybody should be against children dying and thus support gun regulation. Like I've said before, an outright ban on the Second Amendment isn't going to happen. Little things like this are going to be taken away bit by bit, piece by piece, until your children and your children's children are left with nothing. If you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, it's going to get burned and jump out. But if you put it in cold water and gradually turn the heat up until the water boils, the frog will stay in the pot until it dies, because you've just conditioned it to be boiled to death without even knowing it.
I've also asked the school board to make a part of every day some kind of anti-violence, anti-gun message. Every day, every school, at every level. One thing that I think is clear with young people and with adults as well is that we just have to be repetitive about this. It's not enough to simply have a catchy ad on a Monday and then only do it every Monday. We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.